welcome to the first edition in 2011 of Retail Global Trends. In this edition we're going to be looking at some of the trends that are happening in the USA as well as around Europe and other parts of the world. As you can see, we're in the middle of winter, so some of those trends are going to be winter based. I realise some of you are still in the middle of summer, in fact a heat wave, but I hope you enjoy the trends we're going to be looking at in 2011. Retailing is about putting stories together. Here we've got Hansel and Gretel in a German village being used on a large scale to create that experience for the consumer. Some of us have to do it on a smaller scale, but what are the experience stories we can put together? And yes, this is the grand scale. Some of it we've got to do on a very small scale. I'm going to show you some examples of how you can create an experience in your business. One of the must-read books is Creating a Retail Experience by Joseph Pine III. If you haven't read that book, it's well worth reading to discover how you can create an experience in your organisation. It talks about the fact that yes, you need the product, but you need to create the aesthetics. You need to put in some educational elements, and also you've got to entertain the consumer. The important thing is you've got to do these four things equally. Don't just concentrate on one of them, look at all four and ask yourself how can you build those together in your retail business. We're in Jerome, in the middle of Arizona. This is recognised as being one of the best historic towns in the USA. It's interesting how this town has been developed. It was based on a copper mine 100 years ago. And the main business in the town then? Prostitution. Now, what can we learn from this town? They've made this an experience for the consumer by looking at the history of the area and then building that together to offer a retail offer. So what we've got is the old prostitutes' buildings are now being used as shops to sell more unusual clothing and a bit edgy type products. So they've actually used the history of the town and brought it into a modern situation. Down in the valley, now wine is grown. You may argue wine is grown in a number of areas. What's the point of difference? They paint wine barrels. They've got the local artists to paint wine barrels. These wine barrels are displayed around the vineyards, and then after 12 months they're auctioned off for charity. So this particular part of the world, to create a point of difference, has looked at history and then said how can we create an experience for the consumer based on the history, and being a bit quirky. So what's the lesson to be learned is to look at the history around your establishment. What can you use to bring into the modern retail era as a point of difference from that point of view? You may not have prostitute shops, you may not have a vineyard, but I'll guarantee there's something different historically in your part of the world that you can bring into your retail business and build into the experience for the consumer. A lot of retailers often ask about how do you build experience and theatre in your store? Where do you get the props from? Well, we're actually in Arizona at present, and it's easy in this part of the world. What you need to look for is where are antique shops, shops selling second-hand products, etc., and constantly look at what they're offering. These type of shops provide a high range of different types of props that you could actually bring into the retail situation. A typical display, if you're creating theatre, needs to concentrate on about 3 props. So you look for a theme when you're going around places like this and saying, what 3 props can I put together to build a display? Then you can create the theatre. And of course this is cowboy land, so it's easy to get those themes together. But think about your own situation. Go and look at antique shops, go and look at second-hand shops, car boot sales, and look at what props you can get together to build a display. Those displays need to change probably about once a month, so you need a constant feed. I've got one client who goes around refuse tips and looks for props on a monthly basis. He takes them home and he paints them. So you need to look at these things and say, what can I do with them? Can you use them in their original state, or can you paint them? But go out there, look at these antique shops, look at these bring and buy shops, and see what props you can find to create some theatre in your store. Branding is something that a lot of people talk about in retailing. We're in the middle of Arizona in a town called Sedona. Sedona is one of the best branding examples I can show you, where a whole city has got together and brought a branding policy together for a city. This means that individual companies have had to change their brands for the whole of the community. So it's interesting to look at how a city has developed branding. Branding is about the customer's experience. It's about consistency. It's about how you put the package together. You can't really make a decision on what the branding journey is going to be for the consumer. The consumer makes a decision on their experience as far as branding is concerned. So let's have a look at a few examples from Sedona. It was Martin Lindstrom who really looked at what was called brand sensors in his book. He looked at branding and said it's about the customer's journey, but it's about what the customer sees, what the customer hears, what the customer feels and tastes. It's about all their senses from that point of view. In Sedona, what they've done is they've brought these senses together by providing a package. So when the customer sees is basically the same throughout the town. They kept to the same colour themes, etc. They've used water and sculptures as a theme through the town. So they've taken some of the theories of brand sense by Martin Lindstrom and taken that as a theme through the town. Even McDonald's, the company that you associate with red and yellow, have had to change their colours. They've got rid of the red and yellow symbols, and they've used a green M to get the message across. So the message in Sedona is think about the journey the customer takes. Think about the senses. How does the customer perceive your brand based on what they see, what they hear, what they smell, and what they taste? It's about the total experience. Retailers need signage, we all know that. But too often we get too many signs around. You've got to be clever when it comes to using signage. So in Sedona we came across one company that actually was doing signage very cleverly. This was a company where they were using carpets that were made by the local Navajo Indians. And what the Navajo Indians had done, had put down the time element on the signage on how long it took for each process of making the carpet. This is a great way of getting value across to the consumer, because you could see how many hours each part of the process took. Now think about your own business and how you can use similar signage to help create value for the products you sell. What's your Navajo carpet in your business that you can use as a storyteller based on time to justify price? One of the challenges over the last few weeks has been the pricing issue. During the recession, we've had to look at discounting in many retail situations to get through the difficult period. But what have we seen in the last few weeks is the price of petrol has increased, so price has become a big issue again. Think about your pricing structure. You have two types of products. You have a known value product, and a known value product is where the consumer knows the exact price, such as with petrol. Then you've got non-known value products, where the consumer does not know the exact price point. This is the area where you can play around with the price points and the price flexibility. In the restaurant industry, for example, they've started taking the dollar sign off on some restaurant meals. So instead of the dollar sign or the pound or the euro sign, then the price, they're just putting the number. And the irony is, as a result of that, sales have increased. Other things that are being done is cheap products are being put next to expensive products. but the price of the cheaper product has been raised to give the perception that the more expensive product is cheaper. So there's all these games being played along the games of pricing. But the golden rules are: identify your known value products, identify your petrol, keep the price kites exactly in comparison to other retailers' unknown value. Look at your non-known values and look at the flexibility you've got there to try and play around with the pricing. The aim is to grow sales. Don't just grow it on price, grow it on value. Those are the key issues we need to be looking at when it comes to pricing. I've done a few articles on pricing which are on the members site, so check out our thinking process as far as the price game is concerned. One of the challenges all retailers have is how do you launch new products in an exciting way? And suppliers often have the same problem. You've got to dare to be different. You've got to create that experience for the consumer. Well, we're in St. Louis at one of the trade shows. They've done something completely different and it's really worked in getting the attention. They created a fashion show to launch new products. Now the new product was new plants being released in America. But by creating a catwalk, what they developed was this fashion parade. And that works for a number of different items. Why not consider putting a fashion parade into your garden centre to launch new products or any other type of retail outlet? Let's just have a look at what they did in St. Louis. During this month, we've been looking at how to create an experience. We've shown you examples from the USA, from Belgium, Germany, and in creating an experience is critically important. In fact, it can be even at a supermarket level. The supermarket next to our accommodation over the Christmas period understood how to create an experience for the local inhabitants. So they had a coffee bar, like many supermarkets do, but it also had an internet cafe, and they designed it so it related to the local experience for the consumer. They used some old-fashioned shop fixtures at the front of the supermarket, so you had that nostalgia about the old German town before you went into the modern part of the supermarket. So there's lots of things happening out there. And what have the newspapers been saying? Well, over 60% of Americans bought gift cards as presents during the Christmas period. But in the first month, only 30% of those cards were actually redeemed in the shops, down 10% from this time last year. So all these developments are taking place. Walmart has hit the news as well. Walmart have announced that within 3 years they want a $1 billion produce retail market. They're going to get that product from 1 million local farmers. And then again in the newspapers, Walmart are saying that what they're trying to do is to create a reduction in the price of fruit and veg by reducing the waste in the supply chain. So that's going to cause some interesting developments in the marketplace. So I hope you've enjoyed this edition. And in the next edition, where we're looking at ideas in Canada, the USA and the UK, I'll be working with some farmers market conferences and looking at the food industry, both at the large scale and at the small scale. So thanks for joining us on the January edition, and look forward to seeing you next month.